Hello everybody, and welcome to my first of 3 videos on this, the Canon EOS Rebel XS. In many other countries, this would be called the 1000F. In Japan, it is the KISS F. So 3 different names for the exact same camera. This is an interchangeable lens DSLR, which just means you can take the lens off and put another one on at any point. It has a 10.1 megapixel CMOS APS-C sensor with a 1.6x crop factor. Okay, crop factor is pretty widely understood, but if it's new to you, what that means is that compared to 35 millimeter, or in digital terms, full frame, the effective focal length of a lens designed for 35 millimeter is multiplied by 1.6x to represent the field of view of the smaller APS-C sensor. So basically, if you have just bought one of these and put a 50 millimeter lens on it, it will function like an 80 millimeter lens if you're used to shooting those in 35 millimeter. Okay. In JPEG, it can shoot 3 frames per second and 1.5 frames per second for RAW files with a buffer of 5 RAW files or 4 RAW plus JPEG files. So you basically have a couple seconds of shooting in burst mode with this camera. The ISO range is 100 to 1600. It has video output, meaning you could connect it to use it as a video camera, but it cannot natively record video. The shutter speeds are 30 seconds to 1/4000th of a second and bulb. And the viewfinder has magnification of 0.81x. One source that I read said it was 0.51x, but it's got to be a typo. So I'm pretty sure that this is 0.81x. And 95% frame coverage. Now what that means is the 0.81x means that what you see in the viewfinder is 81% of the size of what's going to end up on the sensor. 95% frame coverage means that if what you're looking at right now is what is on the sensor, then you're going to lose about 2.5% top and bottom that you won't see in the viewfinder, but that will be on the sensor. It has a matte field focusing screen with the autofocus points indicated, and the flash sync speed on this camera is 1/200th of a second. The target market for this camera was the entry level. In Japan, the KISS line; in America, the Rebel line; and in other countries, the 4-digit numbers indicate an entry level camera. It has lower tier specs, especially in the viewfinder magnification, but also it has a closer viewfinder eye point than other cameras, meaning that a long eye point means that if you have glasses, your eye can be out here because you have glasses and you can still see the whole viewfinder. With this camera, you basically have to jam your eyeball up against the back of the viewfinder to see the whole viewfinder, which makes it a little bit challenging to use for glasses wearers. Most of the features in this camera are also menu controlled. There are some buttons here, but a lot of what you're going to be doing is through the menus, and having to go into the menus to control something is also a hallmark of entry-level cameras. And you can see that the build quality on it is a little bit lower than upper-end cameras. Now, all that said, an entry-level camera can still take great photos. So just because it's an entry-level camera does not, for any reason, mean that it's a bad or a lesser camera in terms of the images it can provide. It was made by Canon in Japan. Really? Yeah, it was made in Japan. Huh. From 2008 to 2010. Usually Canon has their entry-level cameras made in Taiwan. So anyway, it was preceded by nothing. This was the first digital camera of this tier in the Canon line. It was concurrent with quite a list. The 450, 500, 550, 40, 50, 60, and 7Ds. The 5D Mark II, 1D Mark II, and the 5D Mark II, 1D Mark III and 4, and 1DS Mark III, and it was followed by the Rebel T3, which is also called the 1100D and the KISS X50. So if you have your XS KISS F1000F, we're going to go over all of the different features and functions on it. In this video, we'll talk about what they are. In the second video, we'll talk about what they do. And in the third video, we'll go over the menu system so you know how to set your camera up to use it. Starting right here, these are the strap lugs. And these are where you're going to connect your camera strap. This is your sensor plane indicator, which will tell you where your where your camera sensor is if you are using it for taking extreme measurements for macro work. This is the flash, the pop-up flash. There we go, pop-up flash. Do love doing that. Flash hot shoe. That little white line is the index, which tells you which mode you are set to in the command or mode dial. On-off switch, ISO selection button, command wheel, shutter release button. On the front of the camera, we have the autofocus assist light, lens mount, the lens indices. If you have an EF lens, you use the red one. If you have an EFS lens, like this one right here, you use the white one. So if your lens has a white square, when you mount it, and we'll see this in video 2, you line it up there. If it has a red dot, you line it up there. We have the lens release button here, the badge, maker information, and then of course the flash pop-up button right there. There we go. All right, anyway, on the camera's back, we have the viewfinder, diopter adjuster, menu button, display button, LCD display. This is your aperture value, EV compensation button, white balance button, drive mode, playback, delete, picture style button right here, autofocus button, meter mode button, set button, the asterisk button, your AF point selection button. You'll notice that some of these things are blue. The blue items are the buttons dual uses or only use in playback mode. So once you have photos on your SD card, if you hit playback, then you can delete them, select printer information, zoom out or zoom in. And this light down here is a little lamp that tells you when information is being written to your SD card. If it's off, your SD card is not in use. If it's on, data is being written to your SD card. On the camera's sides, here we have a USB port, a remote control port, and your video out plug. So you can see it uses a mini USB, which was the standard back about a decade ago when this camera was made. There's your remote control port, and then your video out. And the video out is just a little 1.5 millimeter video jack. It's not HDMI or anything fancy like that. And it will allow you to use this camera to transmit video to another source. Like I said, you cannot actually record video with this camera. It is for stills only. And it does not like having this. Okay, over on this side, we have the SD card port, which you push to open. And then the SD cards, oh, that's where that went, fit in this way, just like that. On the camera's bottom, we have the tripod bushing, serial number, registration, and other important electronic information, battery chamber, just like that, battery right there. We'll see how to change batteries and everything and talk about the battery more in video 2. Some notes on your XS. If you check the firmware and you have version 1.0, just 1.07, that's the current and final version of the firmware. If you have anything 1.06 or lower, you do not have the current version. Also, based on the changes described for firmware 1.07, if you don't have that, it is worth trying to upgrade to it because the changes are worth the upgrade. A couple of things not to do with your camera is don't touch the shutter or the mirror in here. If your finger oils get on the mirror, you can tarnish it, which can impair metering. Also, don't touch the shutter because you can jam it and that can ruin it. Same thing with the sensor. You don't want to touch the sensor with your finger. That can leave smudges that are very hard to clean off of it. Don't leave your camera and lenses in the car because the heat can really, really damage them. It can cause lubricating oils to get to what places they're not supposed to. Enough heat can warp the plastic or damage the components. You don't want to do that. Same thing with cold. And also, leaving these in your car is a good way to have your car's window broken and your cameras just disappear. Don't store these in a plastic bag or box unless you also have a rechargeable desiccant pack to put in with them. Don't let this get wet. It's not weather sealed. If water gets into it, it will short out your camera and that will be the end of it. And just remember that your Canon EOS Rebel XS KISS F1000D is a precision tool and should be handled with care and respect. As long as you take care of your camera will take care of you. So that was it for video 1. In the next video, we're going to start really digging into this camera and we're going to go over everything about it and how to use it. Then in video 3, we'll cover the menu systems. So I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching this video. Please give me a thumbs up. That lets me know that I'm on the right track producing content which is useful and helpful to you. If you have any questions or comments, please leave those in the comments section below. I'm pretty good about checking these every couple of days and answering questions. If you have any suggestions or ideas for future videos, and if I have the technical know-how and equipment, I'm more than happy to make those. One last thing. Thank you everyone for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. I gotta get up, Steinbeck. I have to turn off the camera.